without purpose. When he creates, there is a purpose to that creation. One of the questions one of the important questions related to the purpose of creation is the existence of hell. And it is a fundamental part of giving purpose to that creation. And that's what we're going to sort of try to very briefly, obviously, talk about and discuss today. That why is hell necessary? Obviously, for some of the Ahlul Kitab, even though hell is mentioned in the Bible, both Old and New Testament, there is a reluctance to accept the reality of hell. This is, of course, بما قدمت أيديهم, because they don't want to take responsibility for their actions. So they deny the existence of hell. For example, amongst Christians nowadays, the existence of hell is perhaps a minority view, even though it seems to be a fundamental part of the religion. Many Christians do not accept hell, even their theologians. I'm not just talking about the man on the street, even their theologians do not accept the possibility or the reality of such a thing as hell. So they say, for example, that yes, God created man, and he created him flawed with original sin, so to speak, and that is why he had to then send his own son, to then die to purify or somehow forgive these sins, so then that people can go to heaven, and there is no sort of hell. Those who don't accept this message will only sort of die in a permanent way. And it's something that I've actually even debated Christian theologians in formal forums on this issue. And this has been their opinion. That is so. And actually, I said to the theologian that once that if this is so, then why didn't God just create man in heaven? Why put us to go through this life and then send his son to die and so on and so on? Why was all this process necessary? And as we said, the existence of hell is fundamental to giving purpose for creation. Now, what is the Islamic view on why we were created, why we're placed in this world? Well, that's obvious. We all know that, isn't it? It is to be tested. He has created us to test us who is the best in his actions, because he has given us free will. And I've talked about that before, why free will is good and why it's important and why we should have it. But we have that, and as we have it, we need to also learn how to use it properly. If we do not use it properly, if we choose to do evil, if we choose to be proud, if we choose to be jealous, if we choose to be petty, if we choose to be arrogant, if we choose to disobey God, if we choose to tread the path of sin, then these choices are ours to make, and that is why Allah has placed us in this world, so that we may be tested on how we're going to choose. And actually, it is also very important. Some might say, okay, well, God knows beforehand how you're going to choose, isn't it? And why didn't he just create you into heaven directly as well then, if he knows how you're going to choose? He's good and he's bad and so on and so on. No, because this is something that also needs to be experienced, because we learn through the experience. I may sin. That doesn't mean that now hell has been necessitated for me. The mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that he will forgive those sins. For those believers, Allah will take away the consequences of those evil actions. So even if they had sinned, it may be that they will then learn from that mistake and they will repent. They will come to a realization. Why was it bad for me to sin? Something will happen then in their life, and they will then realize, this was why Allah had commanded me to avoid this. This is why it's so important to obey Him. And then they can change. And this is part of the beauty of the system that Allah has created, whereby He gives us chances. And He gives us that opportunity to repent and to reassess ourselves and to turn back. And that's why He swears in the Quran by that soul which blames itself. وَلَا أُقْسِمُ بِالنَّفْسِ اللَّوَّامَةِ. I swear by the soul that blames itself, that is able to find those flaws in itself and correct its course. So this experiential learning is very important. Now our brother was reading Surah Al-Kahf, which has the story of what Musa and Khidr. Now Musa, as a knowledgeable man, why is Allah sending him to travel with Khidr to gain more knowledge? How was Musa gaining that knowledge when Khidr wasn't even speaking to him? It was not through theory, it was through practice. He had to learn by experiencing the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, saying, this was why Allah does what He does. And that experience was a lesson. This is to convey to us that we too should learn from our experiences. It is not enough just to read the Quran and then think that I have understood it. أَحَسِبَ النَّاسُ أَنْ يُتْرَكُوا يَقُولُوا آمَنَّا وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ. The people think they will be left to say we believe and they will not be tested. No, certainly we must read the Quran, and then if we have believed it, Allah will then want us to experience the teachings of the Quran and see if we can live by it as well. So, now going back to so this is the purpose of life, to be tested. Going back to our question of the purpose of hell. Now if we choose to do evil, such a person who wishes to do evil, who chooses disobedience and sin, like Iblis, he cannot go into heaven. You cannot. Someone who has this sort of arrogance, wants to disobey God, he cannot go to heaven because he's going to turn it into hell for everyone, isn't it? If I go to heaven and I'm proud and I'm petty and arrogant and vengeful and jealous, now I'm going to make it an evil place for others. This is what we see in this life, where good and evil are mixed together, and we mix together, and I may be evil and you may be good, and then I will do something to hurt you, and this is why you have to suffer. Whereas heaven, there should not be any more suffering. So these kind of people, they cannot go. So the philosophy of hell is to then separate that evil from the good. وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا إِلَى جَهَنَّمَ يُحْشَرُونَ. Those who disbelieve, they will be gathered. They will all be taken together into hell. لِيَمِيزَ اللَّهُ الْخَبِيثَ مِنَ الطَّيِّبِ. So Allah may separate good from evil. وَيَجْعَلَ الْخَبِيثَ بَعْضَهُ عَلَى بَعْضٍ فَيَرْكُمَهُ جَمِيعًا فَيَجْعَلَهُ فِي جَهَنَّمَ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْخَاسِرُونَ. So that Allah may take all that evil, place it on top of each other, put it into hell. And those are the ones who are the losers. This is the philosophy of the separation of good and evil. So it's like the philosophy of prison. Why do we have prison? In this way. Someone is running around, for example, robbing people. What do? We put him in prison, isn't it? Because he is harming others, and we want to separate that evil and that harm from society. So he cannot harm others. He should be put like others who are like him. Go there, be together, all of you evil ones, isn't it? Until you maybe learn your lesson, and then you can come out, isn't it? So the philosophy of hell is the same as well, isn't it? Because we've been given this free will, part of that is that some percentage of people will choose evil, and they need to be then separated from the rest of society, from the people of heaven. Of course, another philosophy for the existence of hell is justice. We cannot imagine that God would let the evil ones go unpunished. أَفَنَجْعَلُ الْمُسْلِمِينَ كَالْمُجْرِمِينَ مَا لَكُمْ كَيْفَ تَحْكُمُونَ. Should we make the ones who are criminals, who are wrongdoers, who have oppressed others, should we make them like the believers and the Muslims? How would you judge like this? How could you even think to attribute such injustice to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Should we imagine that someone like Yazid or Saddam is there with Prophet and Imam Ali together, treated in the same way? It cannot be. We cannot imagine that Allah would act in such an unjust way. To let someone who has murdered and raped and killed and pillaged and looted and stolen and oppressed others to be there with someone who has sacrificed themselves and their livelihood and their life and their time in helping others and in service to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We cannot imagine such an injustice. So this is why hell is a necessary part of the purpose of creation, of the wisdom of creation, the purposefulness, the hikmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And He never acts without hikmah. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will guide us on the path of paradise and free us from the fire of hell. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر